Okay, so I'm seeing a few people in the Zoom room, and if you could just please give me a thumbs up in the camera if you can hear me. Thank you so much. All right, we had a few technical difficulties, so I apologize for getting started a little bit late. And please go ahead and mute yourself if you could, and I'm going to be getting started here. And I will keep trying to let people enter as I see them popping up on my screen. Okay, so and I'm hearing an echo, so that will be interesting. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited to share this information. I have a background in working with cardiac patients for 25 years, so I am really passionate about heart health, really passionate about helping people stay healthy and avoid heart disease. So we're going to talk about some contributors to heart disease today, as well as prevention tips that you probably aren't aware of. And if you are, then kudos to you for staying educated and or your doctor for keeping you informed. All right, so my feeling is it's time that everybody understand the true root cause for cardiovascular disease so that we can all live long, live well, love much, and die fast. I want people to have a very short death period and a very long life period, full of vitality. And please go ahead and mute yourself if you aren't already muted in the Zoom room. Okay, so I want you to pay special attention. If you do have a family history of heart disease, if you have risk factors for heart disease, like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, if you're overweight, if you're not exercising enough, lots of different reasons why we develop heart disease. If you want to shed excess pounds, this information that you will learn today will help with that. If you're frustrated with being on lots of medications, you'd like to maybe get off of some, if you've been told you're pre-diabetic, if you want to reduce inflammation, chronic pain, or if you simply just want to improve your heart health. So I'm not going to stand up here and spout statistics at you. I'm going to share with you what I have learned in my almost 30 years of working in with chronic disease and in my 10 plus years of working in wellness. So my feeling is N equals 1. So who's a scientist in the room? Any scientists? So N equals 1 basically is it's a study of 1. It's a, a lot of times you'll see in big, large scale studies, N equals, and it's what were the number of subjects in the study? Well, my feeling is we are all our own study, and N equals 1. What works in your body is what matters. My recent background is in functional medicine, where it is a very individualized approach to healthcare because we're all living in our own ecosystem. So if you're already committed to your health, which most of you probably are because you learned about this talk from Fit Over 50, so you are already exercising, taking care of your health. So what you learned today will help you take your health and your wellness to the next level. Okay, so I've got 3 topics I want to share with you that are going to help improve your health, longevity, and help you reduce risk for cardiovascular disease. And hint, it's not about calories in, calories out, and it's not about hours on the treadmill. All right, so I am Angie Gallagher. I'm a certified functional medicine wellness practitioner, and I got certified through the Institute of Functional Medicine at the Cleveland Clinic. Prior to that, I was a clinical exercise physiologist, and I worked in cardiac rehab. I worked with cardiac and pulmonary patients. So if any of you ever went through cardiac rehab in Albany, you might have seen me. I also worked at the Corvallis site here and there. So I'm certified as a clinical exercise physiologist. I'm also a certified HeartMath practitioner, which I will talk about what that means in a little bit. And I also call myself a major lover of cheese. And we have learned that cheese is not bad for your heart. So hallelujah to that. All right, so in my time in cardiac rehab, I had over 25 years of working in cardiac rehab. I saw so many people just surviving, but not necessarily thriving. And I got to become a little worried about that. So I'm gonna tell you some stories about some of the people that I worked with and why I pivoted in my career to go into functional medicine. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of some people that I saw. So they're all made up names. So we're going to call this first one Linda. She was a thin, very active, athletic woman, probably at the time in her early 60s. She had no cardiovascular risk factors. Her blood pressure was fine. Her cholesterol was fine. She was thin. She was athletic. She didn't smoke. No diabetes. The one risk factor she had was stress, and she was in cardiac rehab. I mean, so just stress alone. I just really want to impart on you that stress alone. So for yourselves, for your family members, really understand that. And we did not have what she needed. She didn't need to come to cardiac rehab to learn how to exercise. She was already a triathlete. So we really didn't give her what she needed. She needed to learn how to manage stress. She needed to learn how to balance her nervous system. We'll call this next guy Phil. Same situation, thin, runner. I think he was a triathlete. Otherwise, very healthy man. He came into cardiac rehab after having a heart attack and a stent. And we kind of did our typical approach, which was making sure he was taking all his medicines, putting him on, on the exercise equipment, telling him the old American Heart Association guidelines, and he went on to then have to have bypass surgery. So did we really do him any favors? Then there was Fred and Joe, both young-ish, like 50s, early 60s, which I consider young. And they were otherwise healthy, both thin, both active, both had really active jobs. Their cholesterol was low, their blood pressure was low, they weren't diabetic, but yet they were coming back to cardiac rehab again and again, another heart attack, another stent. I was concerned. This didn't make sense to me. Why, if someone had no risk factors, were they continuing to have heart disease? And then we have Bob. So Bob was on his third time in cardiac rehab. He, again, active, he didn't smoke. All of his risk factors were controlled, and yet he was back in cardiac rehab for the third time. So I decided, and by this time I had been so frustrated, I had gone back and gotten some education in functional medicine, which I'm going to explain in a minute. So I used some of what I learned to help Bob. Bob was depressed, he was frustrated, he was a very active man. He wanted to work in his yard, he wanted to do landscaping projects, he had hobbies he wanted to enjoy in his retirement, and yet he was on his third heart attack. By this point, he was having chest pain every day. He couldn't do hardly any exercise without having chest pain. So he's depressed, he's really down. And I decided I'm going to see if Bob will try some of these things that I'm learning in this functional medicine training. So I had him change his diet, not by the guidelines of the hospital dietitians, but by the guidelines that I was learning in functional medicine. And I had him work on his stress. We worked on heart math training. We worked on breathing retraining. We got to the point with Bob where he lost 25 pounds. He stopped having angina. In fact, he was exercising at like triple and quadruple the levels that he had previously been exercising at. No chest pain, felt 20 years younger. Chris, this is one that I saw just before my departure from working in cardiac rehab. 34, maybe 34, like a kid. And he's in cardiac rehab after having a heart attack. He had major gut issues, come to find out. I talked to him about what was going on with his diet. He had a lot of issues with his gut. He was thin. He didn't have high blood pressure. I don't think he even had really high cholesterol, but he was a major gamer. So he played a lot of video games. He didn't get a lot of outside light, and he had a terrible diet. So at 32 or 34, he had a heart attack. And then the last story is the story of good news, which is two of the people who I had worked with who were, in this sort of young, healthy, fit category. I got them into a functional medicine doctor, and they got off of the merry-go-round and they established true foundational health so that they no longer have any cardiovascular issues. They're feeling good. They're living life. They're not worried. So what I'm going to teach you today are some of the things that we teach in the functional medicine space. So these are just some of the basic nuggets that I really encourage when I'm working with people now as a functional medicine coach. So what all of those people had in common was that none of them were aware of these three topics that we're going to go over today. So if you could see my slide, if those of you who are able to see it on your phones, and some of you are, it looks like, you would see a tree, and then you would see underneath the tree in the soil. So the tree is a tree of health. And so and imagine the tree is you, okay? So this tree has got happiness, health, vitality, energy, strong immunity, a strong focus and concentration, healthy weight, purpose, passion, pleasure, strength. Okay, to have all of these things as part of your tree, what do you have to have in the soil? So the tree you need appropriate sleep, appropriate detox, whole foods, good hydration, healthy relationships, healthy movement, mindfulness, forgiveness, hydration, healthy digestion. That's really important. Healthy gut, a healthy gut. And we're going to talk about that. So that is functional medicine approach. So functional medicine is everything that goes wrong in the body, there's a root cause. It's not just, well, something went wrong, so here's your medication. No, something went wrong. Let's figure out why. Let's figure out what's not balanced in the soil that's not allowing you to have this healthy, vibrant tree above soil. Okay, so the first topic we're going to talk about today is cholesterol itself does not cause cardiovascular disease. How many people already understand that? Most people think cholesterol causes heart disease. For many years, we just thought cholesterol, bad. Cholesterol, get it down as low as possible. Cholesterol is bad. Why would the body make cholesterol if it was so bad? Cholesterol is actually really important. So when we blame cholesterol for heart disease, it's like blaming the firefighters for the fire. Cholesterol shows up when the body has to be repaired, but what's causing the damage to begin with? So that's what we have to understand. Cholesterol is a repair material. The body uses it for a lot of things, but when we have a lot of damage, that's unnecessary damage that we're causing because of toxins, because of eating a lot of foods that create oxidation in our body, by having a lot of inflammation, cholesterol goes to those sites to fix it. And then what happens is you end up getting plaque buildup. You get narrowing in the arteries. We're talking about heart disease, vascular disease. So there is no bad cholesterol. Without cholesterol, there is no life. Cholesterol is made in every single cell of the body. It's used for the cell membranes. So cells have to be fluid and squishy. They're not hard and rigid. They have to be able to move and bend as they go through the blood system. And the cholesterol is what makes those membranes fluid. Cholesterol is used for building new cells. Cholesterol is very important for hormone synthesis, to be able to have appropriate hormone levels, which are basically the system of our body that tells everything else what to do. Cholesterol is important in being able to create bile acids, which help us to break down and metabolize fats in our diet. Cholesterol is involved in tissue repair, and cholesterol is involved in fighting infections. So what we need to be aware of is the cholesterol transporters. So what's carrying the cholesterol? That's where cholesterol gets its like good and bad name from. So there are different transporters. They're called lipoproteins, which are a combination of a fat like cholesterol or triglycerides and a protein. It's called the hydrophilic phospholipid, and that helps a fat-like substance be able to float through the watery blood. Otherwise, fat and water don't combine, right? So they have to coat those lipoproteins with something that helps it be soluble in water and be able to carry it in the blood. So HDL carries cholesterol back to the liver. That's why it's known as the good cholesterol, because we think, oh, getting cholesterol out of the arteries is good. It serves its purpose when cholesterol is no longer needed at a site for repair. It shuttles it back to the liver. LDL carries cholesterol from the liver to the tissues when there is a necessary repair. So LDL can be broken down into different types, and that's what we want to watch out for, is those different types of LDL. So some of those LDL can be dangerous, and they can be more dangerous when they become oxidized. So there's ways to know what the dangerous levels of LDL are, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So I'm going to move on here, and we can have time for more questions. I don't want to get too in the weeds about all of the different lipoproteins, because I want to have time for all of the important message. So oxidation, oxidative stress, these are also things that we hear these words a lot, but what do they really mean? What does oxidation really mean? Well, oxidation happens when oxygen-containing molecules that have an uneven number of electrons interact with other molecules and steal electrons, which makes the other molecules become unstable. This is something that actually needs to happen in certain contexts. We need to oxidize things in order to be able to create fuel for our body. But when oxidation becomes unbalanced with antioxidation, it's when we get into trouble. So we want to have enough antioxidants in our food. So all the colorful foods, all the colorful fruits and vegetables, all have antioxidant power. We want to balance the oxidation with antioxidation so that things are staying balanced. Our body's doing what it needs to without creating too much oxidized material. But some of those LDL, if they become oxidized because we are eating a diet that's high in processed foods, inflammatory foods, we're not eating organic, we're getting a lot of toxins in our environment, then those LDL can become oxidized, and that makes them much more dangerous. And that's where the term bad cholesterol comes from. Generally in healthcare, you're getting your lipids checked once a year, and you're getting a basic cholesterol, basic triglycerides, a basic HDL, and a basic LDL. That does not really tell you much about your risk, because the LDL can either be high in what we call the large fluffy or the subtype A, or the small dense, which are subtype B. And you can get tests that tell you that. But just a basic LDL does not really tell you very much. And if someone has a high LDL, you're going to get put on a statin. That's just the way it generally has been treated. Since we've been putting people on statins for the last many years, we haven't seen a decline in cardiovascular disease rates. Yes, it has reduced death rates, and there are certain population of people who do benefit very much from being on statin drugs, but not everyone benefits. And I would want to know, is my LDL comprised of mostly benign, large, fluffy LDL? They're like little cotton balls, they're just, they're not really dangerous. Or is there a lot of small, dense LDL, which are like little BBs that poke holes in your arteries and cause damage? And that's where plaque buildup happens. So you can get that test done. But it's not being done generally in conventional medicine. Let's see. So you can ask for, your doctors may not understand why you're asking. They're doing the best they can within a system that's really not designed well, right? We have a pretty broken healthcare system. They're doing the best they can. They're doing the best they can with the information that they have. And so you might have to go in there and say, hey, I learned about these other tests, and I understand that they're pretty easy to get. Would you mind ordering these for me? And they might be like, oh, yeah, absolutely, I would. Thank you for reminding me. Because they just aren't getting a lot of that information. They're so busy. So Lp(a), if you just do a capital L, capital P, and a small a, Lp(a), and we're going to give you access to all of these slides later. So I will create a PDF and we'll get an email sent out. Lp(a) is one you can ask for. That one is one that 10 to 20% of people have a high level of this, and it puts them at increased risk. It's not easy to change through lifestyle. There are some supplements and medications that can lower Lp(a), but it's good to know, because if your level is high, you want to be that much more diligent about getting all of your other risk factors under control. ApoB, APO, capital B. This is basically, ApoB are proteins that are attached to most of the harmful LDL. So it's kind of like a little neon sign attached to all the harmful LDL that says, oh, I'm a bad actor, you better watch out for me. And you can get that one checked as well. And that's another easy one to get. You can also test your large fluffy and your small dense and see how much of your LDL is in those different particle sizes. So there's ways to tell if your LDL is dangerous or not. Do I need to take the statin, or is my LDL largely fairly benign? You can get more information. So that's what I want to share. And you can also ask for a fibrinogen level. Fibrinogen is what makes our blood sticky. And if we have high levels of fibrinogen, we're more likely to get a clot. And a clot is one of the first thing that happens that causes us to have a heart attack. So fibrinogen would be something else that's very easy to check. Okay. If your doctors say, I don't really think it's important to check these, I don't imagine that they would, because they're just trying to help. They're doing the best they can. But if they say no, you can get that checked on your own. I have access. I have a provider account with a lab that's there's one in Kaiser, one in Eugene, and you can work through me and I can help you identify the labs you can get, and you can just go in. It's a very low cost and you can just get them yourself. Easy peasy. All right. Topic number 2. Improving metabolic health is key to reducing your risk. Metabolic health basically is how well do we handle sugar? When we eat sugar, do we have a normal response of our insulin? And that sugar is taken out of the blood and into the cells very quickly, very easily. Or are we insulin resistant? Meaning the sugar that we eat is not being able to be taken into the cells very effectively. It's taking more and more insulin to get sugar into the cells. It's kind of like a suitcase that we've jammed full of clothes, and we can't get the suitcase to close because it's just too full of clothes. And so we just keep putting more and more weight on that suitcase, trying to get that lid down. So that's what insulin resistance is trying to get the sugar into those cells. But because we've maybe been eating too much sugar for too many years, our body is just not, the cells are becoming more resistant to the insulin. And so it's taking more and more insulin. That's insulin resistance. That is a very big risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Typically in your doctor's office, they're going to test your fasting blood sugar. And if you have no history of diabetes, you're not probably going to have an A1C unless you ask for it. And you should be asking for it. If you are wanting to really understand, if you truly have good metabolic health, then you would want to ask for some additional tests to know how well your body is processing sugar. So, and again, you're going to get access to all of these slides, so you don't have to be writing everything down furiously, but if you want to, feel free. The first one is called the glycomark, and this one tests for how often we have spikes in our insulin. So if our insulin is constantly spiking, that's not good. That's a very direct risk factor for endothelial damage, for damage to the lining of your arteries. A C-peptide evaluates for long-term levels of insulin, kind of like a A1C evaluates for a 3-month average of your blood sugar. Uric acid, very closely linked to non-alcoholic fatty liver, which is also a very big risk factor. And it's linked to cardiovascular disease, and it's caused by excess fructose consumption. You can see high fructose corn syrup in so many of our processed foods. And then there's a HOMA score, which takes into consideration your fasting blood sugar and your fasting insulin level, which again tells us a lot about your metabolic health, and then just getting a straight fasting insulin level. So each of these things are very easy to get done. And then the number 3 topic is inflammation. And then we're going to go into all the things that you can be doing to improve all of these areas. Inflammation is a killer. Inflammation plays a key role in all stages of disease formation. I gotta move my slides around here. In the formation of vascular lesions that are maintained and exacerbated by cardiovascular risk factors. The consequence is endothelial dysfunction, which is damage of the lining of our arteries that sets in, and we can define it as an integrated marker of the damage to arterial walls by the classic risk factors. So inflammation is a part of the whole process that happens when we see the plaque starting to build up on our arteries. It's part of the initial stage of that. Okay. So Hippocrates himself said, all disease begins in the gut. So you can't see my slide right now, and I wish that you could, because this slide shows what a healthy gut wall looks like and a leaky gut. Show of hands, how many people have heard the term leaky gut? Fantastic. That's a pretty good number of you. Okay. So leaky gut is a kind of it's an interesting term that they use for this, because I think of leaky gut as something totally different than what it actually is. But leaky gut is where the cells of your gut wall, which the gut wall is a single cell layer thick. That's very, very tiny. The cells of your gut wall become, the junctions become widened. So we want a nice tight junction between each of the cells of our gut wall, so that only the things that are supposed to get through and get absorbed into the body get through. But what happens in leaky gut is we have things that create or basically poke holes in the gut wall, and then things can get through that shouldn't get through. Microorganisms, toxins, various bacteria that we don't want getting through the gut wall. And what lives just inside the gut wall? 90% of our immune cells. So 90% of the immune cells in our body are just inside the gut wall. So whenever something's getting through that gut wall that shouldn't get through, the immune system's going on attack. And that's if we're eating things meal after meal, day after day, and the immune system is like, what is going on? It's just like a constant battlefield where you just have constant immune activity. And immune activity is inflammatory activity. I mean, a lot of what happens when the immune system is fixing our body is inflammation is taking place. You injure yourself, what happens? Part of the healing is inflammation. So when that's happening all the time, meal after meal, snack after snack, day after day, all this, we're eating all of this stuff and things are getting through that gut wall, the immune system is getting overwhelmed. It's getting confused, it's getting hyperactive, hypervigilant, and then it starts to mistake its own body tissue for foreign invaders. And that's when we start to get autoimmune conditions. So autoimmune conditions are preventable and are treatable when we can heal and seal the gut wall and repair the immune system. But autoimmune conditions they're starting to name a lot, they're starting to call a lot of conditions autoimmune. They're starting to say cardiovascular disease is autoimmune, diabetes is autoimmune. Even some of our, some of the cognitive disorders like when we can fix the gut and reduce the inflammation, balance the immune system, we can really improve a lot of things in our health. My next slide, if you guys in the physical audience could see it, shows the microbiome and the benefits of the microbiome. So everybody's probably heard of the microbiome, yes? Raise of hands. Okay. So all of those bacteria that live inside our gut that do an incredible amount of work to keep us alive and keep us healthy. We are more bacterial cells than we are human cells. They do a huge number of things for us. They're a huge part of our immunity. They synthesize certain vitamins. They're a huge part of our metabolism. With a healthy microbiome, we're able to maintain a healthier weight. The microbiome helps with regulating inflammation and reducing inflammation, bowel-related diseases, and it's also connected to autism. So we really need to have a healthy microbiome, and we're going to talk about what it means and how to take care of our microbiome. But all of these chronic issues that we're seeing today are related to what's happening in the gut and the microbiome. It's pretty incredible. I'm just fascinated by it. Never knew for most of my 25 years in cardiac rehab how important gut health was to my patients' heart health. I wish I could go back and really teach them what I know now. The inflammation testing, rarely is this done as a general lab test, very rarely. You have to be asking. So there are four kind of main ones that I generally like to get. Homocysteine, it tells whether we're predisposed, our vessels are predisposed to inflammation. An HSCRP, which is a sort of a general marker for systemic inflammation in your body. Testing an omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio. So that's how much of the fat circulating in our body is coming from omega-6, which is an inflammatory fatty acid, versus omega-3, which is anti-inflammatory. We really want to have a low ratio. We don't want to have 20 times more omega-6 than omega-3, which is what the standard American person probably has now. And then a ferritin level. Ferritin is our stored iron. Stored iron is really important, and we need to have a certain amount of it to be able to function well. But if it's too high, then there's a very big risk for cardiovascular disease. So you really want to make sure you're in the sweet spot there. Okay, so on to what can we do to optimize in all of these different areas. So we're going to talk first about nutrition. And I'm going to kind of move a little fast so we get through everything, but there's going to be time for questions afterward. So I'm going to first talk about what I want you to eat more of. And you guys are probably already doing this. You're already exercising. You come to Fitness Over 50. You're aware. You're taking care of yourself. So some of this is probably not going to be new to you. Where you get your meat is important. Industrialized feedlot meat is not good for you. I would rather be a vegetarian than eat meat that comes from a feedlot. So ideally, you're getting locally sustainably grass-fed, grass-finished meats, cage-free, free-range, ideal, pasture-raised, wild-caught seafood. Organic, a lot of people think that organic, schmorganic, it doesn't matter. But I think that the more we can limit pesticides and toxins, the better. Sure, you might get something from an organic farm that is near a non-organic farm and there's some crossover or whatever, the best we can do. And yes, it's more expensive. So do what you can with your food budget. The Environmental Working Group always comes out with their Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen report. And I think they just recently came out with their 2023 report. And they basically, they are looking at what crops are most heavily sprayed. And so their Dirty Dozen are the crops that are most heavily sprayed with pesticides and herbicides. And you really want to use your grocery dollar to buy organic with those Dirty Dozen. The Clean 15 are the crops that are not sprayed quite as heavily. So if your budget only goes so far, then the Clean 15 produce you can get inorganic. So Environmental Working Group, and you can get an app. You can get their little Clean 15 Dirty Dozen app and have it on your phone. So I always go to the store with my app ready to go and look at the list, make sure I'm buying off the appropriate lists. 12 to 15 different plant-based foods per day is what is recommended for a healthy microbiome. That doesn't mean a whole serving of each of those. So even just a couple of baby carrots, even the garlic you use when you're sauteing up, whatever you're going to have, like those count as a plant food. But 12 to 15 per day, that might seem like a lot, but if you consider all of your herbs, your aromatics, all of those count. And if you're, chopping up one vegetable, why not chop up 3? So trying to get more variety in your diet with plant-based foods. In my program that I run, the people who seem to be the most successful are the ones that are getting the widest variety and the most plant-based foods in their day. Pre and probiotics. So getting foods like onion, garlic, artichokes, bamboo shoots, psyllium, all of those things are great prebiotics to feed your bacteria that are in your gut. And then fermented foods. So, eating some unsweetened yogurt or kefir, taking probiotics, fresh sauerkraut and kimchi. I love making my own sauerkraut. I put it on everything. It's delicious. So getting a lot of those fermented foods. We just aren't eating those like our ancestors used to, and they have so much benefit. Eat less industrialized seed oils. So you'll hear people talk about PUFAs. Those are polyunsaturated fatty acids, but PUFAs have both good and bad. So we can't demonize PUFAs as a whole. So I always say industrialized seed oils. There are 6 you want to be aware of. And this is a hard transition. I'm going to tell you right now, when I made the transition, it was very frustrating. I started reading labels and I couldn't believe the number of quote unquote healthy brands were making their foods with these bad oils. And I'm really good at it now. And my house is pretty much free of these, but they're in 90% of all of your processed foods, dressings, dips, crackers, chips, everything. So you ready? There's 3 S's and 3 C's. Sunflower, safflower, soybean, corn, cottonseed, and canola. You will be shocked when you start reading labels. They are in everything because they are cheap. They oxidize very easily. they go rancid much more easily, and they do the same thing in your body. You really want to try and stay away from those. So it means you're going to eat a lot less processed foods, I can tell you that, because they're in so many things. Yeah, they oxidize easily, and those oils are pro-inflammatory. Processed meats, trying to stay away from the processed, bolognas and sandwich meats, trying to get most of your meats as much as possible fresh or frozen. Refined grain products. So staying away from the cereals, the crackers, the chips. I mean, yeah, I have my favorite crackers. They're rice crackers. They're Mary's Gone crackers. They're way too expensive, so I don't buy them very often, but there's no added oil. They're just rice and seeds. I make my own crackers a lot. You can get chips from the Siete brand, and they're made from cassava flour and coconut flour, so there's no grains in them. They're delicious, but they're also kind of expensive. But trying to get away from refined grain products, using whole grains whenever possible. And this is not going to be a popular comment, recommendation probably for a lot of you, but there is a lot of evidence that gluten is inflammatory. It pokes holes in the gut wall. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person is going to respond bad to gluten. Some people seem to be able to eat it and they're just fine. Whether or not that's going to, bite them in the butt later, who knows? And there are people who can go to Europe and eat pastries all day and have no issues, but they come back here and have a slice of bread and they've got immediate gut problems. So I've given up gluten and I feel way, way better. I have a way better gut. If I eat it, it definitely tends to mess me up. Anecdotally, and again, back to my N=1, I have seen almost everybody that I have ever worked with that has given up gluten have improvements in their health. So take it for what it is. It's not a popular recommendation for a lot of people who really love their bread. But once you get used to it, it really is, it gets easier and easier, except for when your son makes really good toast in the morning and you smell it. Okay, reading labels. So if you could see my slide, you would see a couple of labels that I found when I was staying with a friend, and they are not really aware of any of this. So when I looked through their cupboards, I was house sitting and they're like, help yourself to anything in the fridge or the cupboard. And so I started going through their stuff and it was just full of all of these awful, terrible foods. So I took pictures to use as for my visual aids. So Skippy peanut butter. First ingredient is roasted peanuts. Second ingredient is hydrogenated vegetable oil. Cottonseed or cottonseed, soybean, and canola. So, and hydrogenated, which makes it even worse. It's a toxic substance. I wouldn't feed it to my dog. Just saying. Brummel and Brown, made with real yogurt because it's healthy, right? Second, let's see, Brummel and Brown. Let me go back. I got to uncover the label here. So ingredients in Brummel and Brown. First ingredient, purified water. Second ingredient, soybean oil. And then after that is cultured non-fat milk and then palm kernel oil. Not healthy. So it's really important that we're savvy and aware of these things. Okay, so on to exercise. I've got exercise and two more topics, so I'm going to kind of try to race through this. I like to call exercise joyful movement because if we don't like it, it's not likely to be something that sticks. And you guys are all part of Fitness Over 50, so clearly you found something that works for you, and kudos, that is amazing. First, I'm going to say you cannot exercise yourself out of a bad diet or poor sleep. I used to think as an exercise physiologist that exercise was a panacea. It would cure everything because exercise was just that great. And I have learned in functional medicine training that is not the case. Nutrition and sleep they are more important than exercise. We have got to put the right foods in our body, and we have got to get appropriate sleep and rest. If we are inflamed, if we have a lot of toxic load in our body, it makes it very hard. Our body does not want to shed weight very easily. It goes into fight or flight because it's stressed. And so exercise sometimes is, if people are exercising to lose weight and they can't lose weight, they're like, why isn't it working? I'm exercising like crazy. I'm killing myself at the gym. But the body is so stressed and it's trying to keep those toxins safe and away from the body by storing them in the fat tissue. So it's not going to release the fat tissue. So I've seen people like just killing themselves at the gym, hours doing heavy work, and their body is just not releasing that fat because the toxic load is not allowing the body to release the fat. If a person has a sugar burning metabolism versus a fat burning metabolism, then their exercise is only going to go so far because they're not teaching their metabolism how to go after that stored energy that's on the body. That's part of what I do in my program with people, is help people shift their metabolism to not to be just a fat burning metabolism, but to be a flexible metabolism. And there's a lot of evidence that having flexible metabolism gives us much better resiliency. And especially with this day and age and what's going on with viruses, we really want to be resilient. We want to have a flexible metabolism. So intense exercise, if we're not sleeping well, if we're restricting calories too much, if we have a toxic load in our body, intense exercise may actually be counterproductive. So we really want to make sure that we're not adding stress to the body by exercising too much when there's other things going on that we need to address. Okay, so that said, what is the best exercise to do? My first answer is always the exercise you will do. If it's something like, I could tell you the best workout that's just got, it's just like completely dialed in with cardio and strength and flexibility. But if you're not going to do it, there's no point. So what are you going to do? What do you like to do? What makes you want to move your body? I will say I have a few biases because I've learned a lot about the benefits of natural light. So getting outside is important. Whether you get outside to do your exercise and do your walking, or you work out in the gym, but get outside later, it's all fine as long as you're getting outside. Get outside every day for natural light. We need natural light in our eyeballs. We need natural light on our skin. It actually has an effect on our neurotransmitters, like our dopamine, our serotonin. It also affects our hormones, like our melatonin. So there's a lot of evidence that when we get outside during the day, if we get outside early, especially like when the sun is starting to come up, and then we get outside again, sort of midday, that's going to benefit our sleep because our melatonin actually is affected by the light we get during the day. So getting outside is important. Again, whether or not you do your exercise outside or do it in a gym, I don't care, just get outside. Exercise should feel good. It should bring you joy. You want to do something that's got an aerobic cardio component, and then ideally you're also getting some sort of strength exercise and flexibility. So walking is obviously a great one, hiking, jogging for some. Any other cardio that you do, any cardio equipment that gets your heart rate up and keeps it up is great. Swimming is great. It's not going to give you the weight bearing, which we need for good bone health, but it's a great cardio exercise and great for muscle building. Yoga is excellent for strength and flexibility. I encourage everybody to do yoga for good flexibility and balance. I really think it's important. I think it's one of the best things we can do for just healthy aging. Cross training and HIIT training can both also be very, very helpful. HIIT training, high intensity interval training. I'm not sure if they do any of those kinds of things here, if they do like group exercises with HIIT training, but it's just basically intervals of kind of working at a harder intensity and then with rest intervals mixed in. So you're kind of pushing harder and then taking a little rest, pushing harder. And there's some evidence that really has some impact on our longevity. And then group fitness can be a great choice because there is a great social benefit to doing something in a group. I am a trail runner and I love my trail running group. It's part of my mental health to be out there and be social and see my running friends. How much exercise should you do? So ideally you should be moving your body multiple times a day. I mean, yeah, it's good to go to the gym. It's good to get, your 30, 40, 60 minutes of exercise. But if you're like sitting still the rest of the day, then that could be better optimized. So you want to be getting up and moving more throughout the day. Ideally, 200 to 300 minutes of exercise per week is where you should be trying to get to. Strength training 3 times a week, doing 8 to 10 different muscle groups, 10 to 15 or 20 repetitions, and anywhere from 1 to 3 sets. And you should feel like when you get to the end of a set that your muscles are fatigued and you're starting to feel a burn. If you do 15 arm curls and you could barely feel it by the time you get to 15, that's not enough. You should feel like that last one you're starting to feel the strain. Stretching and flexibility ideally is daily. I'm not perfect, but I try to have a morning yoga practice just in my spare bedroom that helps my body be more limber and move easier throughout the rest of the day. Balance and agility 2 to 3 times per week. Do they have balance training here? Awesome. That's really important. HIIT training, you could do high intensity interval training. You could do 1 to 2 times per week. And then you could do one longer bout of exercise at what we call zone 2, which is like a level of exercise where you're very comfortable, you're talking, you're not getting short of breath, but you do it for a longer period. Like maybe you go out for a nice long hike on the weekends, a beautiful place that you've been training to go. Okay, I'm gonna jump into, so staying motivated for exercise, just real quick, having a workout buddy is helpful, music, trying new things, signing up for a fun run or a fun walk, setting your sights on a beautiful hike that you might wanna get to. And then I always say there's no room for guilt. Do not guilt yourself into anything. Guilt is not a good energy. It really isn't. Motivate yourself by imagining the person that you want to be, by thinking about all the benefits that you'll get from exercise. But if you're using guilt to motivate yourself, it's only going to get you so far. It's not a good energy to be in. Celebrate your small successes. Celebrate every effort along the way. Don't just celebrate getting to a certain milestone. Celebrate every step. Remember, it's a journey, and also keep a growth mindset. If there's something you've never done before and you think it might be kind of fun to try, but you're a little afraid because you've never done it before, just try it. Just get out there, try a new dance class, sign up for a fun one or a fun run or a fun walk. Do something that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, because as my mentor says, your comfort zone is where your dreams go to die. Okay, 3 C's to being successful with exercise. You got to be committed. It's got to be convenient for some. Convenient if you're busy. If you're a busy working person and you don't have a lot of time, convenience is key. And you got to be consistent. So consistency helps make it a habit. I'm going to jump into stress so we get through this whole thing. So as I mentioned in the beginning, stress is huge. It is absolutely huge. And I've listened to a lot of people in the wellness space that are starting to say stress may be the biggest risk factor for chronic disease. Stress contributes to every disease known, and it can slow or prevent recovery. It affects all the systems of the body, including the musculoskeletal, respiratory, cardiovascular, endocrine, gastrointestinal, nervous, and reproductive systems. When we're under stress, we breathe fast and shallow. We entertain thoughts of fear, worry, doubt, and it moves us further into that fight or flight or freeze side of our nervous system, and it lowers our heart rate variability, which we'll talk about. So how you respond to stress has everything to do with your overall health. When we don't respond well to stress, we have elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure, elevated cortisol, which is our stress hormone. Our liver converts glycogen to glucose, so our blood sugar goes up. We have decreased digestive blood flow, meaning our digestive system isn't getting the attention that it needs. And all sorts of things can go awry at that point. So the autonomic nervous system, you guys know what that is? When people talk about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, it's the nervous system that does everything in our body automatically. We don't have to think about breathing, right? We breathe all night, even though we're asleep and not thinking about it. Our heart rate beats. Our digestion happens. We don't decide, I think I'm going to start digesting now. These are all things that happen, but we have some ability to control how well they happen by where we're at in that side in our nervous system. So there's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic side of our nervous system. Sympathetic is the stress side, is the action side. Parasympathetic is what we call the rest and digest. We need both, because there are times we need to be decisive, quick thinking. We need to take action. We need to make a move now. Maybe we need to jump out of the way of a car that's coming our way. So we need to be able to have quick action, and that sympathetic nervous system is what gives us that. The parasympathetic, rest and digest. We need to be able to be in a state of calm, a state of peace, where we can digest our food, where we can be just simply at peace and comfortable. If we're in fight or flight, if we're in sympathetic chronically, our digestive system is going to be a mess because it needs to be in the rest and digest for optimum digestion. You could eat the healthiest plate of food in the world, but if you're eating it stressed, you might have all kinds of reactions. Your gut, your digestion might not work well, and you might develop food intolerances. So we need to be able to be in that sympathetic side of our nervous system. That's where our stress hormones will be lower. Our DHEA is higher, which is a hormone that's closely tied to health and longevity. And yeah, the body doesn't heal when it's in fight or flight. Fight, flight, or freeze is the new way we're talking about it, because sometimes we get frozen and we can't take action at all when we're constantly stressed. So we need to be able to be in that parasympathetic rest and digest for our body to heal, for our body to release weight if we're trying to lose weight. Okay, so stress can be the thing that's getting in the way of you getting the results that you want. And some people, maybe you know someone like this, that they've been in fight or flight for so long. It's just a part, they're so in it all the time. They don't even recognize it. They're just so go, 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 hyper, just type A, and they don't even see it in themselves that they're in that fight or flight. And to go into that calm state feels so foreign. It doesn't, they're like, this isn't right. This doesn't feel good, because it's so unfamiliar. So if you're that person, take note. Maybe you know someone in your life that's that way. We all need to be able to exhale and get into that state of just being and not always doing. If you're chronically stressed, exercise may be more harmful than it is helpful. Deep breathing and slowly and deeply breathing can shift you immediately out of that fight or flight. And there's a lot of science. If you've ever heard of the book Breath by James Nestor. And I will just ask anybody that's not muted to please mute yourself. Anyone that's on the Zoom, please mute yourself if you are not muted. Okay. So James Nestor talks about the 5.5 second breathing cycle, where you breathe in for 5.5 seconds and you breathe out for 5.5 seconds. There's a lot of science around this. They've studied a lot of ancient spiritual practices, a lot of like mantras, a lot of just different like prayers, where it's all based on this 5.5 second inhale and exhale. And if you actually practice that, it does shift your nervous system into that parasympathetic. It's pretty amazing. Gratitude is also really huge. So I'm a HeartMath practitioner, and I use breathing and gratitude to help people get into that more relaxed parasympathetic state. So just simply being in a state of stress and then saying, think about something you're grateful for. Think about someone you love. Think about someone you appreciate, or something, or a place, or a pet, and immediately you will shift. So gratitude is huge. Staying present in the moment, practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness is basically accepting whatever you're feeling that you have without judging it, and with just letting it be, without trying to push it away, trying to escape it, trying to numb it, just accepting whatever you're feeling, naming it, being aware of it, not judging it, and then just kind of letting it sort of on its own, sort of dissipate. Okay, sleep. I think sleep is the last one, and then there'll be some time for questions. So sleep is really important. And I'm just looking at the chat here. It looks like we're all good. Okay, so sleep is really important. I, again, for many years did not recognize the importance of sleep. I would stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning because I liked being awake, doing my thing. And I realize now that that was really not healthy for me. When we get poor sleep, it increases our levels of stress and depression, increases the stress hormone cortisol. We have more brain fog, poor concentration and memory, our immune system really suffers when we don't get enough sleep. Blood pressure will be higher, guaranteed, if you're not getting enough sleep. Blood sugar will always be higher when we're not getting enough sleep. We have increased cardiovascular risk, compromised detox. Our body does most of its detox work when we're sleeping. And that's what we really want to protect those sleep hours so the body can do the detox work that it needs. We have a reduced longevity, and our relationships oftentimes will suffer. So if you could see on my slide, I have on one side of the slide when we get enough sleep, and on the other side of the slide when we don't get enough sleep. So when we get enough sleep, there's hormones that are very much regulated by sleep. So when we get enough sleep, we have low ghrelin levels and we have higher leptin levels. So ghrelin helps us feel a normal appetite, or it controls appetite. So when we have low ghrelin, we have normal appetite. If we have high ghrelin levels, we're hungry. And I don't know about you, but if I don't get enough sleep, I am hungry all day. It's like I just ran a marathon or something, and I did nothing but just sleep and stay up too late. But I'm hungry all day if I don't get enough sleep. It's just like, it makes sense that it doesn't. It's like my body doesn't need food, it just needs sleep. If you get enough sleep, you'll have lower ghrelin, your leptin levels will be higher, which allow you to feel more satiated after a meal. You don't feel like you need more and more food in seconds and thirds of your meal. But if you don't get enough sleep, your ghrelin levels will be higher, you're going to be hungry throughout the day, and you're not going to be as satisfied after a meal. You're going to want those seconds. So how do we get better sleep? So establishing a sleep schedule is really important. And maybe some of you guys have figured that out. I'm still trying to get it figured out for myself, because there's just so many things that I like to do in the evenings. But we do need to establish a regular schedule, and weekends and weekdays should not be completely separate and different from one another. Getting to bed earlier, again, this is back to circadian rhythm. There's lots of science in the circadian rhythm, living in accordance with the cycle of the sun. So getting to bed earlier can also be really helpful. And I know that since I've been doing that, my sleep is way better than it used to be. Avoiding screens or blue light 2 hours before bed. So if you are on screens, if you're watching TV, if you're on your computer, you can get blue blocking glasses. They're really easy to find. I can send a link for the ones that I use. And I love them. I can be, because I admit I work until I go to bed a lot of times, but I'll put my blue blockers on and it makes a big difference in my sleep. Avoid eating 2 to 3 hours before bed. This is really big. This is really, really important. And it's hard for those evening snackers like myself. But when I don't eat before bed, I definitely have better sleep. And I track my sleep with my Oura Ring. If you've ever heard of an Oura Ring, this is a great little device that tells me how well I'm sleeping. It tells me my heart rate variability, which is a measure that I track as a heart math practitioner. It's a measure of autonomic nervous system balance. So when you have high heart rate variability, it means that you are in a good balance in your nervous system. If you have low heart rate variability, it means that you are probably very stressed. And that's very linked to less longevity. So my Oura Ring tells me about my sleep and my heart rate variability. Things that will always tank my heart rate variability are eating before bed or having a glass of wine, sadly. So that was one of the big reasons why I stopped having the daily glass of wine. Getting outside during the day, as I mentioned earlier, getting outside, getting direct natural light, that means no sunglasses. And you guys are probably going to look at me like I'm crazy pants, but as long as you are not eating a bad diet and eating a lot of those industrialized seed oils, sunlight is not terrible. We want to demonize the sun just like we want to demonize saturated fat. We need some sunlight. We're solar powered. And when you get sunlight in your eyes, especially like early morning before it's really bright, that's going to help signal your melatonin levels to rise in the evening. So you're not going to go stare at the sun, obviously, but you're going to get outside and you're going to do it maybe when there's a little overcast and not always wearing sunglasses. Journaling or meditating, doing a brain dump, getting things out of your head, especially if you're one of those monkey mind people that goes to bed with a million things on your mind, just having a journal, or I'll just talk into my phone on the little notes app, and just like whatever I've got circulating in my brain, I'll just talk it into my phone and then it's there and I can be like, okay, I can just deal with that tomorrow. Sleep inducing music or white noise. If you are struggling with sleep or with stress, anxiety, there's a wonderful tool called BrainTap, and it's an app you get for your phone. There's really incredible science behind it and how it's really helping people with anxiety, PTSD, just a lot of trauma issues. And you get the app and then you can use just your own little earbuds, but then they also have a next level technology where you can get their headset. And the headset has like some visual component to it as well as the auditory. And it just resets neural signals in your brain. And it's very, very good for balancing your nervous system, getting you out of fight or flight, helping people with trauma, PTSD, helping people get better sleep. So it's pretty cool. And it uses what's called I'm blanking on the word. Binaural beats. Binaural beats is part. It's a frequency of sound that is kind of hidden within the music. So you're hearing beautiful, beautiful, relaxing music, but within the music are these binaural beats that have a certain frequency and then the way they affect the gamma waves of your brain. That's as technical as I'm going to get. Okay, so consider some sleepy time teas or supplements. There's a lot of information out there about melatonin. It's coming more and more. We're learning about melatonin as a powerful antioxidant as well as a sleep hormone. And people are like, well, if I take melatonin, my body's not going to produce it on its own. And there's actually not a lot of science to substantiate that. But there's more and more science that says that melatonin is a very powerful antioxidant, supports your detox pathways. And so there's more than just one benefit for it. If you take it for sleep, it can help with sleep, but it can also be a good antioxidant. I have a sublingual that I just put under my tongue. I just put a couple of drops under my tongue and I just put it on my bedside table, and I've been loving it. Very, very, very important. Your room is very dark and very cool. So low 60s for temperature. Ideally, there's no digital lights or lights of any kind in your room. Those are also really important environmentally. Okay. So that's sort of the end of my information. So I have a program. It's called Transform Your Health, Turn Back Time. And I work with people in all demographics. I've got 30s through 70s. People in my program for various reasons. A lot of people are doing it because they want to lose weight, and people lose weight very effectively in my program, but it's also just a basic health program. And because I have a long history of working with cardiac patients, I'm comfortable working with people with a cardiac history. So it's a 3-month program. There's a lot of education. There's one-on-one coaching. There's group coaching. We have a good time. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of education on planning and preparing meals. We dive in deeper to these topics that we talked about today. We talk about digestion and gut health and sleep and stress and all of those things. Yeah, there's the group component, the one-on-one component. So I always tell people, people say, can you really turn back time on your health? Absolutely, you can. So we all have a chronological age. We all have a biological age, and we can reverse our biological age. We can go back in time biologically by doing the right things for our health. So if you have questions, again, those of you in the room that don't have the slides, you will get those sent in a handout. I'll email something, you'll get a handout. And the contact information for me will be on the handout. There'll be an email address. And then my website is heartwellnesscoaching.com. So if you wanted to go there sooner, you could just go to heartwellnesscoaching.com. And there's multiple buttons in there on the website to set up a discovery call if you wanted more information or wanted to talk to me. So with that, I will open for questions, and I'll check the chat here. Someone says, how often should we have tests? You mentioned avoid processed grains, rolled oats, processed grains, whole grain cereals like 10 grain. The sleep app. Okay, yes, Brain Tap is the name of the sleep, and it's not just for sleep, it's for balancing the nervous system. The labs, I think, so if your labs are good, if you have lab work done and everything is good and there's like no worries, having that done annually is probably fine. But if there are any red flags, if you have your labs done and there's something concerning, of course you need to see your doctor. Your doctor needs to see all of your results and talk to your doctor, and they will probably have guidelines. But I would say I would want to do it every 6 months if there was something that I wanted to keep an eye on. Rolled oats are not a processed grain per se, but oats have a very high glycemic index. So I had people come to cardiac rehab who would have oatmeal for breakfast with no sugar on it. Maybe they'd have oatmeal with maybe like a half a banana or something. But their blood sugar would be sometimes 300 or more after a bowl of oatmeal. And so I would tell them, let's try something different next time. How about having a couple eggs with some avocado or some veggies, some salsa, and they'd come in and their blood sugar would be like half, be like 150. So oatmeal can definitely jack up your blood sugar. So I always tell people something like oatmeal should be eaten if you're going to go on a big long hike, or you're just getting done with a big long hike or some big physical effort. But if you're just eating oatmeal before you're going to go sit behind a desk all day, then you're just jacking up your blood sugar for no reason. So stuff like oatmeal, 10-grain cereal, those are all things that are really going to elevate blood sugar. So I don't encourage those as a regular thing to eat unless, again, you're going to go immediately do a pretty good level of exercise to burn it. So let me know if that doesn't answer your question in the chat. And any questions from anyone in the group? Yes.
Where do we get this handout? How do we get the information you said, which is available to us for slides and whatever?
Micah.
All right, so you'll email it to me. Okay, I don't know you, I don't have your email, so I'll have to get it to Nate.
Give you my email. That's how we do this, right?
Pardon?
Okay,
Yeah,
None of us really signed up,
thank you.
so
no, you don't have to sign up, but
I know,
But I
don't have a connection with this.
yeah, no, I don't see any familiar faces in here, so I will give the information to Nate. And then what he'll probably have to do is send it out to the whole,
Oh, okay.
or you can go to him specifically and say, I would like to have the handouts from Angie's talk today.
Thank you.
Yeah, or you can write down my email address, which is Angie@heart,
Can you spell it, please?
ANGIE at heart, HEART, wellness, WELLNESS, coaching, coaching, COACHING .com.
Thank you.
Angie@heartwellnesscoaching.com.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can email me there as well. And once I get the handout made, I'll be able to send that. Yeah.
And in fact, this is being recorded, so you can even listen to it again.
Yeah.
The slides will be on there, so you can have a hard copy or however you want to do it, watch it again. Okay, lots of learning.
Yeah, and so if there's any other questions from the Zoom room, type them into the chat. Any other questions from the, yes?
So are you part of the local medical establishment, or how does one connect?
Well, so I am not part of the local, I'm not part of Samaritan. I do work at the, right now, just for a little while longer, at the Thrive Clinic, which is Dr. Sievert. He's a functional medicine doctor. He used to be at the Corvallis Clinic, and then he started his own clinic. I've been the wellness coach for him, and I will be there through well, I'll be there for a while longer, even just virtually, but he's leaving the state. He's going to be moving to Tennessee. So most of my work will be virtual, so done through Zoom. And if you got my email address or my website written down, you can go to either of those to contact me. And again, the slides will be also available so that the contact information will be on there. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Yes, that is a good question. I did not go over the good oils. So good oils are going to be your olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, even ideally grass-fed organic butter, ghee. If you've ever heard of ghee, it's a clarified butter, and it's basically butter with all of the dairy solids removed. So it's just the butter fat, no dairy whatsoever. It's common in India, but you can see it a lot now, and it's shelf-shavable, so you see it on the shelves. So those would be your better oils. Yeah.
I didn't hear any mention of GMOs. in your discussion.
You're right. So yes, I definitely am a fan of staying away from GMOs whenever possible. I'm not going to dive into the science behind that, because it will go into a rabbit hole about it. But I think that's part of why we've had such a problem with a lot of our grain products and why people are having such an issue with wheat. I think when we were first growing wheat crops, when it was something that we hadn't taken all the chemical treatments to it, people seemed to be fine with it. But as we've gotten more and more into the GMOs and doing all these things to hybridize it and make it so that it's got higher gluten content, it's just become more and more damaging for the human gut. So just think we need to quit messing with nature. Nature's pretty smart as it is. Yeah, other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. I hope that there are some helpful nuggets that you can apply to your health. And if you need anything, if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm still here for the people in the Zoom room. Oh, thank you for letting me know of the typo on that. The first few good oils. So the good oils are avocado, olive oil, coconut oil, butter, and ghee. Ghee is G-H-E-E. You wanted my email? Angie@heartwellnesscoaching.com. And there's my phone number if you need to get a hold of me. Let's see.
Presentation there, or you send it?
The presentation will be sent.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. You'll get an email.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see, organic palm oil and organic peanut butter. So that's definitely better. So organic, the only issue with palm oil, generally, palm oil is sometimes environmentally a concern. And so I always like to kind of be aware of where it's coming from, just for environmental reasons. But palm oil in and of itself, unless you're worried about your saturated fat, it is fine. So saturated fat is something that we've been demonizing, and it's not necessarily something we all need to be really trying to eliminate in our diet. However, based on your advanced lipid testing, if you decide to get advanced lipid testing, you may decide that based on some of those values that you do want to limit or reduce your saturated fat intake. So that's something where I think there's a little more nuance and a little more individualization. I'm just a fan of not having any added oils in anything. So, I mean, that you can get peanut butter that's just peanuts. And that, my feeling is if we can avoid added oil in anything, it's going to be more natural and it's going to be better. There's plenty of oil in peanuts already, so we don't need to have added oils in any of our nut butters. And I like to make my own nut butters. I just will soak and then dry my nuts and then make nut butter in my Cuisinart. So thank you for your comments, everybody. Do I work with, yes, so in cardiac rehab, I did work with sudden cardiac sudden cardiac arrest patients. Sorry, I didn't mean to say the word death there, sudden cardiac arrest. I have worked with those patients in the past. In cardiac rehab, I haven't worked with those patients as a part of my own business, but I'm happy to do that. So any other questions from the people in the Zoom room? I think I got them all. Yep, I think I got all the questions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out, but thank you all for being with me. And please reach out if you have questions. I will make my correction on my screen. I apologize for the typo there, but it's Angie@heartwellnesscoaching.com. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great day, everyone.